Straight into the roof of the net. Nice one. Straight down the middle. So a good performance from both teams.
Hello and welcome to Firstpost. I'm Rupha Ramani. Let's get started. On the show today, the 2023 ODI World Cup was far more successful monetarily for India and the ICC. So says a data that was released. How did India manage to do what USA couldn't with the T20 World Cup? Just a few months back. Stay on for that story on the show. Kuwait and Iraq's 34-year-long deadlock crumbles as Iraqis cross over to Kuwait for the very first time in over 3 decades to watch the two play a football World Cup qualifier. We get you pictures from that historic game and moment in an otherwise tense political scenario. And NFL continues to be in the news. This by a legendary player and now, of course, presenter Shannon Sharpe. Sharp on the field and behind the mic, but not so sharp with technology. A viral live video was streamed, mistakenly catching Sharpe in a very intimate moment, creating a meme fest like none other. But first, let's take a look at the headlines on Sports 360. Starting with cricket, Australia beat England by 28 runs in the first game of their 3-match T20 International Series. England won the toss and chose to field first. Australia posted 179, with Travis Head's striking 59 of 23. England's run chase stumbled as they got bowled out for 151. Sean Abbott picked up 3 wickets, while Adam Zampa was most clinical, picking up 2. Heartbreak for England continued in women's cricket too, as Ireland beat England for the first time in 23 years. The dramatic ODI went right down to the wire. Ireland needed 8 runs in the last over. England took 3 wickets to add pressure on the Irish players, but Alana Dalzell struck a boundary on the last delivery to seal the match for Ireland. Over in tennis, Spain secured a 3-0 win over Czechia in the Davis Cup Finals group stage game. World number 3 Carlos Alcaraz was key to the tie. He scored a point in the singles round after his opponent retired. In the doubles round, Alcaraz and Marcel Granollers rallied from behind to help Spain win. Over in football, a TV camera person has accused Argentina's goalkeeper, Emiliano Martinez, of slapping him. This allegedly happened after Colombia's 2-1 win in the World Cup qualifier. The cameraman said he had approached the player after the final whistle. A footage captured by him showed the camera falling to the ground, in fact, after Martinez hit it. And Cristiano Ronaldo has criticized Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag. The Portuguese says United need to rebuild from the bottom. Ronaldo has also questioned ten Hag's lack of accountability. Erik ten Hag and Ronaldo had a bitter fallout before the FIFA World Cup in 2022, with Ronaldo moving out from the club. With India's BCCI Secretary Jay Shah set to take charge as ICC chairman at the end of the year, it's safe to say that India's control over cricket and the growth of the sport globally is undeniable. It's a sport that may have originated elsewhere, but India's dominance when it comes to how the sport is perceived, watched and embraced is rather significant. The ODI World Cup that took place last year proves that. Let me show you some numbers first. The ICC, in fact, released some data that have been collected over time that only shows how successful the World Cup in India was. Not for the sport alone, but also for the economy. It was hugely beneficial to India's economy. Here's what I mean. Let's first look at the direct impact of the World Cup itself. A record 1.25 million spectators watched the matches live at the stadiums. There were 10 cities where the matches took place all across the country: Ahmedabad, Chennai, Bengaluru, Kolkata, Delhi, Hyderabad, Dharamshala, Lucknow, Mumbai and Pune. Each city was very unique and offered a different perspective to watching cricket. And get this, nearly 75% were first-time viewers of the ODI World Cup. It says many things here. One, possibly, that many of these were first-time cricket watchers itself, which means they were traveling from outside the country, from parts of the world where cricket is not that big. Because let's face it, even if you did not like the sport, there's no escaping it. either watching it or even being part of it in some way if you're in the country. 2, it indicates young viewers, many who probably have not caught an ODI World Cup in the melee of T20 cricket. This is pertaining to the viewership and the cricket craze it generated. But here's where it tells a very important story. The biggest boost came to the tourism sector. Tourism alone generated $861.4 million, that coming from accommodation, travel, food services and the like. International tourists alone contributed close to $300 million. And if we had to deep dive, 19% were visiting India for the very first time. And here's the kicker, 68% of them would recommend India as a tourist destination. And it was not only about tourism sector, the job market opened up greatly thanks to the World Cup as well. The event created nearly 50,000 jobs across various sectors, whether it's hospitality, event management, and of course generated an additional $18 million for the Indian economy. The economic impact of this mega event was valued at $253.9 million, and the economic benefit thanks to this World Cup that India received has been pegged at close to $1.4 billion. That's the best ever in all of the years of the World Cup that ever took place, and such a stark contrast to what we watched unfold just some months ago in the US when the ICC decided to get the Americas to host, in fact USA to host part of the T20 World Cup along with West Indies. Now at least they took the safer option of T20 formats rather than an ODI, but the World Cup, especially the USA leg, proved to be a bit of a disaster. And there were plenty of reasons for that, from the horrible pitches that were on offer in New York, to lack of facilities in the hotels where the various teams stayed, to stadiums going empty, washed out matches, and the exorbitant rates that were set for tickets in India games, particularly in India versus Pakistan. The ICC and the organizers faced a lot of flack, and it reflected monetarily too. The T20 World Cup reported losses of up to $20 million. All of this, of course, pointing to the next ICC event and what everyone needs to be careful about while hosting that, while organizing that. And you know it, the host for this one is Pakistan. The ICC Champions Trophy starting February next year will put added pressure on the ICC and of course the host country, because the biggest thing the success of this tournament hinges on is India traveling to Pakistan. And if that falls through, as indications suggest, then Pakistan will have a huge uphill task to ensure the tournament is a success. And maybe that's why the ICC will be watching all developments in this space very closely in the weeks to come. Something quite historic went down between Iraq and Kuwait, a football match. Seems ordinary, but not between two enemy nations who have been at opposite ends for decades, and not when Iraqi fans crossed over to Kuwait for the first time in 34 years. Kuwait's Jaber Stadium witnessed the two countries take each other on in a World Cup Asia qualifier. It was a packed house with over 60,000 spectators watching the showdown. The match was a goalless draw, but it had its fair share of drama. Let's face it, the event itself was nothing short of dramatic. Iraq were down to just 10 men after Ray bin Sulaka was handed a red card in the 7th minute of the game itself. But despite the setback, Iraq fought hard and held on till the very end. And the match finished without much separating the two sides. But it wasn't the scoreline that made for a compelling story, though that was equally arresting. The monumental match was not lost on everyone invested and all present, because these two sides have hardly played each other despite being neighbors, thanks to the political tensions between the two countries ever since the Saddam Hussein invasion in 1990. The first match, in fact, between the two nations took place way back in 1964. The two have only managed to play each other 37 times since then. The last time they faced off was in 2022 in a friendly, which Iraq won 1-0 in Basra in Iraq. Kuwait last hosted a match between the two in 2018, which ended in a 2-all draw, and before that in 2011. So these fixtures come after very long intervals, making one of it each and every one of it, in fact, a marquee event for its fans. In cricketing terms, it's like India versus Pakistan, two nations separated by one border with immense sporting history and very intense rivalry. And what made this clash iconic is that Iraqi fans were allowed to travel to Kuwait for the first time in 34 years. Ever since 1990, no Iraqi fan has crossed over to Kuwait, and this time too, in those 60,000+ spectators, only 5,000 Iraqi supporters were present. These 5,000 were allowed in special vehicle permits and with specific papers. But we aren't going to get into those numbers and those details because the moment was beyond all that. For Iraqis who have long suffered political unrest, this gesture by their neighbour Kuwait was a milestone one.
I can't describe how I feel. I haven't seen Kuwait in more than 30 years. Kuwait is close to us. There were wars and problems, but God willing, the situation will get better and better.
A match between brothers, God willing, and I hope that the legacy of the previous regime dies with this conscious generation. Because the world has become a small village and all people have come to know that the Iraqi people are not to blame for what happened because of Saddam Hussein.
Because fans today want to get over the horrors of 1990, 2003 and want football action to resume. Now, it may seem like a massive gesture in the larger scheme of things, a step forward to try and mend the ties between the two countries, but isn't that easy? Something one football match alone cannot resolve. Tension continues to be rife. 2 years ago, it was an Iraqi court calling maritime borders between the two nations unconstitutional. And not too long ago, it was Iraq's Football Association president, Adnan Dirjal, calling Kuwait a province, echoing Saddam's sentiments. Although he later apologized, that remark had already left a dent, which is why Iraq fans crossing over to Kuwait is indeed an event that could pave way for bigger things to follow and materialize between these two nations. So given the importance of the match, there was a massive turnout at the stadium because it wasn't just a friendly game with Iraq, it was a World Cup qualifier. A chance to be at the World Cup and contesting for it were two arch rivals. That was the good part. Now we get to the not so nice part. The attention this generated, of course, was immense, which led to quite a chaotic evening. Now, the capacity of Jaber Stadium is just about 60,000, but the number present were far more, which meant many fans managed to enter the stadium without a ticket, even coming to the gates of the stadium 5 hours before the start of play. It led to overcrowding, fans climbing over fences to enter the stadium, and many ending up watching the match standing. Absolute mayhem. The crowd was such that fans with tickets were forced to park their cars miles away before entering the stadium. And even inside the stadium, water wasn't provided despite temperatures soaring to over 40 degrees. So even though this moment was celebrated, Kuwait got a lot of flack for mismanagement. The Youth Affairs Minister, Abdul-Rahman Al-Mutairi, has called for an investigation. They've also decided to suspend the Kuwait Football Association Secretary General, Salah Issa, and their Director of Public Relations till these investigations conclude. Because this was just a one-off match, a World Cup qualifier. And a failure of this kind puts a question mark on managing any future commitments. Because Kuwait is set to host the Gulf Cup in a few months' time, which is an 8-team tournament between Gulf nations. So clearly, they need some order in place to avoid such embarrassments to happen there. For now, though, they can be happy about the first steps being taken for improving relations between the two nations. Sport has always played a key role in bringing countries and warring bodies together, and this was a show of that, giving sporting fans across the two countries more hope. Our story today is about a former NFL star who's had an oops moment. Shannon Sharpe, former Denver Broncos tight end, an absolute legend of the game and a current presenter for an NFL show, had a major faux pas that resulted in the internet exploding. Nothing connected with him on broadcast, but rather his own Instagram account that broadcasted Mistakenly, Sharpe shared a rather intimate moment with a woman live on Instagram for all to hear. Thankfully, no show and tell. The moment soon led to a meme fest and fans started taunting Sharpe. Initially, the three-time Super Bowl winner claimed his account was hacked, but the truth eventually came out of Sharpe's mouth on his podcast, Nightcap. You cannot miss the irony here. Take a look.
Shannon Sharpe, a three-time Super Bowl winner, terrorized his opponents for more than a decade. The former Denver Broncos player does not need any introduction, because he is arguably one of the greatest tight ends of his generation. Currently, he is leaving some loose ends behind him, at least in the digital world. The sexually explicit video doesn't show Sharpe or the woman, but it does feature an audio track that left very little to the imagination. And while the streamed Instagram video has been removed, it managed to spark off a flurry of reactions across social media. If the video itself embarrassed the NFL legend, the reactions only added more fuel to the raging fire. Quite a scandal for the Now TV presenter.
Oh, I guess I forgot my code. They ain't cut me. Yes, they did. They must have cut me.
With his reputation on the line, Sharpe tried dodging the bullet, claiming his Instagram account was hacked.
Beware, my Instagram was hacked this morning. My team and I are working vigorously to figure this out.
But little did he realize the internet does not let anyone get away with it. Not even Kylian Mbappe. And that was indeed a hack. In Shannon Sharpe's case, they caught his white lie very quickly, because in the audio, his name could be heard. So, no hack job here, just a hasty move in the heat of the moment. Great with his agility on the field during his playing days, but probably not as nimble when it comes to technology. And so, Sharpe had to take a U-turn. In the podcast he co-hosts called Nightcap, ironically, the NFL player rather sheepishly admitted what actually happened.
I threw my phone on the bed. It dropped. Then after, I called my agent, the agency. I just got to tell them the truth. My phone wasn't hacked.
And with this, Sharpe thought the matter would drop and social media would cut him some slack. But the internet had quite the laugh, especially after Sharpe's admission, including his former opponent, Terrell Owens. Now the presenter, the broadcaster and his PR team are all on damage control mode. That's what happens when you forget to put a DND outside your room. In Sharpe's case, failure to lock or simply an airplane mode. Both would have saved all the early morning trending. Lesson learned the hard way.
Time for last serve. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi invited the Paralympic contingent home in India's capital earlier today. The Prime Minister felicitated the medal winners for their historic campaigns, had a chat with them. Of course, India came back with 29 medals, which included 7 golds. Take a look at the interaction. That wraps up First Sports here today. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you again tomorrow. Till then, do take care.